Hi everyone, thank you for joining. And today I'm going to present our work on the challenges faced by survivors of technology-facilitated abuse to seek social support. Before I start, a trigger warning. The talk discusses sensitive topics like domestic and sexual violence, which can be triggering. So please feel free to leave and take care of yourself. Intimate partner violence, or IPV, is one of the most burning health concerns. In USA, almost half the women and men experience violence through sexual, physical, and stalking acts by an intimate partner. IPV is also a gendered issue. It disproportionately affects women with around 3 times the violence. Technology is a popular medium of conducting IPV. Technology-facilitated abuse, or TFA, happens when the abusers use different modalities to harass, spy, impersonate, coerce, and control their partners. A survey amongst violence shelters report that around 70% of IPV cases involve technology. Survivors face other forms of violence too, and not just TFA in isolation. TFA exacerbates safety risks, resulting in emotional and psychological harm. It can even lead to loss of life, unfortunately. However, the traditional security mechanisms fail to protect survivor safety. Therefore, we view TFA as a holistic violence prevention problem, of which digital safety and privacy is an integral part. We use the upstream story, a parable to design effective violence prevention in public health. In this parable, a river shows the stages of violence as they flow downstream, which is denoted by the arrow. At the bottom, you notice survivors calling for attention. A natural question to ask is, where are they coming from and why? As you notice up the stream, you see them walking on the bridge, which seems to be broken. In this metaphor, the bridge denotes the root cause of violence, or maybe the technology design itself. I want you to instead focus on the middle of the stream. Survivors try their best to cope with the abuse and hold on to the rocks and buoys. These can be technological actions, resources, or people in the community that they can reach out to. Some impactful prior works in TFA, however, only focuses downstream. First, by documenting the vulnerability of the survivors and advocates, and second, by developing critical formal interventions such as tech clinics. Tech clinics are a very effective resource, but only available to a very small number of survivors. However, survivors have a desire for safety before they even reach out to formal interventions. In our work, we identify coping strategies taken by the survivors, such as support seeking in the community. This approach will hope to inform interventions upstream to fix the bridge, preventing survivors from falling down in the first place. Our prior work found that only half the US college students seek any kind of support. But when they do, almost all of them use informal networks such as friends and family, whereas a minority reaches out to formal interventions, such as healthcare, police, or violence shelters. Therefore, we ask 4 research questions. What are the needs of TFA survivors when seeking support? How effective is the support in addressing their needs? What are the socio-technical barriers and challenges survivors face? And how do survivors overcome these barriers and challenges? A large portion of survivors do not conceptualize TFA as abuse or even disclosure. Therefore, it can be hard to recruit them. Nevertheless, we advertised a study on social media, local community spots, and emailed all domestic violence shelters in the US who had a website. Through interviews, we collect lived experiences of 9 survivors who sought support. 7 of them identify as women and 2 as men. Survivors shared their abusive experiences, their process of seeking support, and described their effectiveness. Some authors also have lived experiences of abuse, seeking and providing support as violence prevention advocates, which was instrumental in designing the study. We got exemption from the IRB, took informed consent, and followed a trauma-informed interview protocol. We use a collaborative analysis approach to arrive on themes until we reach saturation. More details about the analysis can be found in the paper. Before we talk about our findings, I want to mention that lived experience of abuse is intersectional and varies in severity among all the survivors. The survivors may have different financial dependence and relationships or living contexts. Also, their relationship with using technology changed a lot after the abuse due to high levels of skepticism and paranoia. These experiences can pose challenges in seeking help. The survivors sought support from a variety of people. Informal network consists of families, survivors' family, friends, and community, whereas formal network consists of people in the position of power who support them in an official capacity. Generally, the survivors wanted emotional support, validation, and functional support more than the technical concerns. But we recognize they may have individual choices and different proclivity to seek support. As one survivor states, I really just leaned on my community for support. I needed a lot of emotional support because the thing that hurts the most was the betrayal. The technical tips from the friends were not important. I knew what I needed for the technical help. I knew there's plenty of resources online, just Google them. In general, survivors preferred informal over formal support based on trust and closeness, accessibility, availability, and little power differential between them. While they looked for confidentiality and legal solutions from formal networks as a desperate call when abuse got very severe. We identified a number of barriers that prevented survivors from seeking support. Further, we examined challenges they faced while with and after seeking support. And finally, the coping strategies they adopt to overcome these. In the interest of time, I'll talk about some key findings. Please refer to the paper for more. One of the biggest barriers for seeking support is that abusers isolate, coerce, and monitor their devices, both offline and online contexts. They deleted contacts, destroyed devices, but also dissuaded the survivors from seeking support by maligning their public image. Survivors felt a lot of shame and stigma, and they wanted to avoid re-traumatization. On the one hand, they feared retaliation from abuser. On the other, they were worried for the abuser, especially with precarious immigration statuses. TFA was largely invisible to survivors and support providers, which delayed the seeking support. Importantly, TFA was considered low priority by everyone, as they did not have visual marks to show for it. Next, we highlight the challenges faced by survivors while with or after seeking support. Most participants talked about receiving generic advice and resources which were inadequate or did not even work. The providers were unclear on how to help. In some cases, their advices backfired and abuser retaliated with even stronger violence. As one survivor shared their experience, most advised me to completely block and deal with the repercussions. Some were understanding that I was scared, more scared than when he was blocked than any other time. Most people don't really understand that the neurotransmitters are completely altered by this abuse cycle. So when we go full cold turkey block, there is so much fear and anxiety that it's debilitating. It's really hard to go on with your normal life. As we worked with US-based survivors, TFA was perceived as an individualistic problem where the onus is on the survivors to reach out for help. As all survivors were disbelieved and blamed, moreover, most formal support providers used unsafe methods of communication which resulted in abuser retaliation. Survivors were also deprived of expressing their grief, and rejections reinforced that grief with frequent betrayals, which eventually resulted in losing trust in the system. Finally, we highlight the coping strategies used by survivors to show their desire to change and overcome these barriers and challenges. Support networks, especially informal ones, collaboratively participated in safety planning with the survivors. They were eager to learn and debug about privacy and security settings of the devices with them. They also took actions on survivors' behalf, which was instrumental in providing physical safety and comfort. Despite abusers' control, survivors joined support groups on social media. Almost all participants supported other survivors to form informal community networks from their own experience of abuse. As one survivor mentioned, I now have an opportunity to share my story and create positive change, even support research efforts like this. I want people to know because it makes it easier for me to seek help when I need it. I ended up becoming kind of a magnet to attract other survivors. People are not sure and they don't want to ask for help because it's so embarrassing and stigmatizing. They want to talk to me because they know I won't judge them. These findings highlight the need for collaborative interventions in coping with TFA that deflects individual responsibility to the community. Finally, with the survivors, we co-construct the recommendations using the upstream story that we talked about to situate the recommendations as tertiary downstream, secondary midstream, and primary upstream interventions. We embed survivors' quotes and feedback in the discussion section to highlight their voices. As the phrase goes, it takes a village to make social change. We believe that a community-focused effort can help both the survivors and support providers to combat TFA effectively. Technology could be designed with nudges for seeking support and providing support to promote community interactions, especially support that reduces shame and stigma and boosts collective safety learning. The designers could provide survivors with a secure means to seek support, even in compromised device scenarios, without opening further channels of abuse. Collaboration from the research and prevention community is needed through awareness and training programs to foster these informal networks of care. And finally, a strong policy of TFA can provide some fixes to the bridge that we talked about. This enables legal and law enforcement providers to provide empathetic informational support. Thank you for listening. Please check out our paper and happy to answer any questions.